Sometimes we would be required to write 4 essays per book. This was to prove that we'd read and understood the book, and to also prove that we had critical thinking skills to be able to argue 4 different viewpoints of the said book. I remember I didn't start learning English until I was maybe 7 or 8.
I see.
Because culture was very important to my father, and so he didn't want us to grow up in Accra and not know our local languages. And so I learned Ewe before I learned English, and so it's my second language. My father was a yogi also. He was home most of the time. We were not allowed out of our home. We were not allowed to speak with our neighbors. We didn't have any interaction with our extended family. We didn't have any friends of that sort. And so it was just us and my parents.
Was that not boring?
Well, some days it was, but mostly it wasn't, because we didn't know anything else outside of the sort of life that we were living. And he always ensured that we were awake about the kind of education we were getting, how useful it was, and he always made us feel special in that regard. And I remember on occasion someone would come to the house and complain that he should send his kids to school and allow them to participate in national exams and that sort of thing. And he'd tell them that his children were smarter than their kids. And so what would happen some of the time would be he would invite them to bring their kids over, and they'd pair us in education, and we would beat them, and my father would justify himself through that. And I'd never thought it was necessary to take exams. We never had any exams at home.
Except for the essays you had to write.
Yes. That was actually punishment. So what happened? We were doing 1 book a week or so, but we did something foolish. We would read the preface of a book and a few pages and pretend that we'd read the entire book, forgetting that he had read nearly all the books that we were reading, and he caught us. And the punishment was that we would go through 2 books and write as many essays as we did.
Interesting. So this continued up until what age, and then when did anything change, if anything changed at all?
So it continued up until I was 20 or 21. This was in 2012 when I left home forcefully. I had wanted to become a doctor, and my father refused, which is bizarre because most parents here would like for their children to aspire to become doctors. He was training us to be yogis also. And so I left home forcefully in 2012, spent a short spell being homeless, and then I met a man who would become my boss. His name was John Roberts. And he took me in. He was running this company called the Open University of West Africa.
Okay. And
I had hopes of joining the Open University and studying there, but I became their head of communications instead. And there was a small segue into how I got into working with refugees, but I'll touch on that later. Yeah. And I went back home, and I went to see my father, and I told him, oh, hey, I'm working at this place, this Open University now. I'm heading their communications. And he was like, well, I told you you didn't need school anyway, so I'm not surprised. And he was not, I thought he would be impressed, but he wasn't, because to him it should have been apparent to all of us that we were studying a great deal. But usually you can't tell these things, especially as a child, unless you have something to compare it to.
Yeah.
And so that's a bit of the story of how I grew up.
Interesting. And so your dad was a yogi, so all of you were practicing yoga, you were seeking to become, practitioners of yoga as well. But beyond he doing yoga, your father, what else did he do?
So he was also a special advisor to Rawlings, God rest his soul, to Mills, God rest his soul, and to Mahama.
A special advisor on what matters?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
We were not allowed in all the meetings, but these people would come to our house very often.
Interesting. For someone listening, the person would say, oh, then of course, your father was one who probably was coming from a place of privilege, influence, had access or something of the sort. What was really the situation with your father's, upbringing?
So he was homeschooled because his father died when he was 11, and his mother was too poor to have him go through school. And so she taught him what she could at home, and he spent the rest of his time at his village library when he wasn't working as a fisherman.
Wow.
Yes, and so he had a very rough upbringing himself.
Was his village also Keta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he worked as a fisher person at Keta.
Yes.
And
for a while, and then I'm not sure how he managed to get himself to Germany, but he got himself to Germany and spent a lot of his life there, and then took a segue to Tibet, became a yogi, came back to Ghana, and had us, and then institutionalized homeschooling.
I'm really interested in, I mean, what he was consulting on. I mean, because ordinarily for presidents of a nation like ours to not just have you come over to speak to them about something, but they come to you to have conversations with you over something, then it must have been something that important for them to move to you as opposed to the reverse. I don't know if from any of the conversations, your engagements, the things you saw, there were certain conversations that you became privy to that you could probably share with our listeners and viewers.
We were never strictly allowed in the meetings, but on rare occasions we would be invited to, say, Rawlings's house, and he would cook for us, and then later they would retreat and have a meeting by themselves. We were never privy to these things, but I do know that it must have been something important, because every election season, police officers with the full body gear and everything are sent to our home because people usually storm the house.
Wow. So your home was actually a national security installation then.
Of some sort.
Interesting. But let's talk about your desire to be a doctor. And there's something that a number of people that I've been talking to have been asking. That,
right.
I mean, you are presently consulting on economic integration, dealing with refugee and migration.
Yes.
I mean, integration and all of that.
Yes.
Some people have asked that. I mean, this homeschooling idea comes with a lot of advantages.
Right.
You've at least indicated one, that, I mean, you got the opportunity to read a lot. Knowing what you had gone through, all right, comparing with the people that you have now gotten the opportunity to engage with, given that you are not allowed to mingle with other people hitherto, what are some of the advantages that you think homeschooling has given you over your peers who did not go through that kind of system?
I think this is coupled with training to become a yogi also. That taught us a special kind of focus and the ability to deep learn. My siblings and I believe that we can study anything that we want to and master it because we can sit down and focus and do deep learning in that thing. I think also it allowed us the opportunity to choose focus areas whenever we wanted to, depending on what we desire to learn. It allowed us the opportunity to choose focus areas. I remember I majored in etymology for a while and decided a year and a half into it that I didn't want to do that anymore. And then I majored in behavioral economics and then economics, and this has now been my focus.
Wait, and for the benefit of our listeners and those who don't know what etymology is has it got to do with maybe the source or the root of words and how?
Absolutely, that's it. Yes.
Okay. So maybe you can say it better, just so we know for certain what
it's the study of the origin and the meanings of words.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then you did that, and then subsequently you got bored.
Yes.
And you decided to go into.
I changed it entirely, and it came at no cost. It came at no fuss. I just had a conversation with my father and told him that I didn't want to study this anymore, and he said, "Okay, what would you rather be doing?" And I changed it, and thankfully we had around nearly 4,000 books at home, and so there's always a wide area of knowledge to choose from.
4,000 books.
Yes.
Your home was a library.
Practically so.
I guess it still is.
Well, we lost about half of them to a flood.
Wow.
But we have about 2,000 plus something books at our home now.
Yes. So you were still talking about the advantages of homeschooling.
Yes. It gives you it allows the opportunity to study what is necessary. I think a large reason I think Ghanaian tertiary education is failing, and even the education that comes before that is failing because we have sort of focused on degrees as opposed to skills. And the fourth industrial revolution tells us that a lot of the things that are being taught in our tertiary institutions are going to be redundant in a decade or so. And so those degrees will effectively become useless. And a lot of people are not thinking about that. I think our advantage, my siblings and I, is that we have a lot of skills and we have the ability to pick up on a lot of skills, and we're not trapped by a degree in a focus area that's not going to be useful right after university or something like that.
So you're saying that whereas your kind of education or your kind of training focused on skills development, what we have presently does not, immediately equip you with skills or inherent skills or developed skills that can readily make you useful for the kind of jobs that we are looking for. Is that what you're saying?
I think so because I used to speak with a lot of master's degree students, and a lot of them were confused as to what they would do after they got out, even though they had a focus area that they were studying in. And also homeschooling just allows you to be able to really see what your child needs to study and to give them that focus and attention that they need. It's very difficult to do that in a formalized tertiary institution. It's really, really difficult to individualize every single student and find out what they should be learning or where their skills are, where their true interests are, and focus on that. But once you have your children at home and you have an eye on them, then you'd be better able to do this. I recognize that this is also difficult because of the kinds of work that a lot of parents have. But it's a catch-22. It's a catch-22. The solution of sending your kids to school partly because you can't be with them because you have to go to work yourself is also a problem.
And so that you'd excuse parents for that, but let's still stay with some of these benefits. You're saying that the homeschooling system allows for individualization of the students, where you can practically identify their strengths and weaknesses, hence where to place focus as far as development is concerned. In the normal education system as we have it, a lot of these policies are taken or are made based on the averages, right? If you, for instance, were to make any recommendations with respect to the normal or the regular education system that we have, given your experience of homeschooling, right? Especially talking of integration.
Right.
Someone who typically would have gone through a homeschooling system trying to integrate into the regular system, what would be some of the suggestions you'd be making?
I wouldn't be entirely certain because I have never integrated into the regular system myself, so anything I say would be pure speculation. I have thought about it. I have thought about taking formal education, and every now and again I apply to a master's program and I get it, but I don't go. I have an open scholarship to study at the United Nations University for Peace, but I haven't gone because a part of me doesn't know if it's necessary, because I'm already doing the work for which I would have gotten that degree, and a part of me feels as though I wouldn't be able to stomach studying in such a formulaic way because it would become boring for me.
Before this conversation, I was reading a particular article by a couple who have, I think, 3 kids. One who was 6, the other 4, and another about a few months. And they had to take the difficult decision of taking their children out of regular schooling and start homeschooling them. And they cited 2 very simple they cited a number of reasons why they had to do that. They spoke about the fact that their children, the first 2, one of them, both of them are the extremely smart kind of children. But one of them is too smart, easily gets bored. Asks 101 questions about everything and give you 200 reasons why his position or his side about something is what is right. The other, in contrast, terribly smart, but he is more diplomatic and he wouldn't talk much and all of that. And they thought that these kinds of inherent characteristics of these children were not being paid attention to in the formulation of the kind of education that is being given to
Absolutely.
them. And so I hear you saying that you are going to get bored because you don't think your peculiarities are going to be considered in the administration of whatever education that is coming.
It would be difficult to. It would be very, very difficult to.
But you think at that level, UN, University of Peace, I mean, at a master's degree level, I don't know which country this is, but whichever place, it should be somewhere there in the West. You don't think at that level it's going to be a lot more interactive and engaging sessions because it's a master's degree program?
I mean, I imagine that it will be. I imagine that it would be. But like, to what degree over 2 years? How much could it be? You know, these are the questions that I ask myself, and I really have deeply considered pursuing higher tertiary education. But again, perhaps a part of it also is that I'm privileged to already be working in the space, and so I don't think it's extremely necessary. Perhaps that's why also. But my siblings hold the same sentiments, and we all do different things.
Yeah, I was just looking out your some of your siblings. I know one of them is a realtor.
Yes.
And another is he calls himself the youngest forex trader known, or something of the sort.
He actually is the youngest forex trader in West Africa.
Okay, how old is he?
He's 18, for crying out loud.
And
it blows my mind.
No, but did he really? Are you telling me there aren't younger people who are forex trading?
If you find them, I'd like to meet them.
Wow. When did he start forex trading?
He started a year and a few months ago.
Okay.
Self-taught, and now he's mentoring people. He's on the same. You should meet him, actually. I don't even understand.
I think I should have a family meeting. Yeah, which means he started somewhere a little past 16.
Yes.
And he has a company.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of his annual turnover or something? just to give it context.
I don't have a sense, and he's going to be mad at me for saying this. But what month are we in? March?
Yes, we are.
He's made over 40k CDs already.
40,000 CDs
already.
In March?
No, like from Jan to March.
40,000.
Yes. And he's 18, and he's living in the bad economy of Accra, quote unquote. You know, just because of a skill. And so would I ask him to go do a master's or to go do an undergrad at university? No, it would be time wasted for him, because he knows how to learn skills. He knows how to look into what the future of work is going to be and study towards that. You know, he's awake about things in the fourth industrial revolution. He's conscious of these things that are happening around him, with regards to work and necessary skills. And a lot of people who go through formal education don't have that switch turned on, unfortunately, because they've studied from the time they were in kindergarten till the time that they finished university, a very formulaic approach to learning, which in effect is not perhaps not the best way of learning, at least not in the sort of world that we exist in today. Maybe 200 years ago was perfect because of the Industrial Revolution, but things have changed drastically.
I hear you telling me that my kind of education is not fit for purpose given my current context. I mean, you're saying that our formal education is fixated on proving a point at the end of every term or semester.
Quite.
Whereas your kind of education, the focus really was skills development, one key of which is critical thinking. But there have been certain, statements, a number of people. So someone like Frank Tete is watching on Facebook, and he's asking, how did your educational approach affect your social and people skills?
Not good. It wasn't good at all. My people skills when I came out in 2012 was really, really bad.
When you say when you came out
So
of where?
I left home
Okay.
in 2012.
Okay.
My father passed in 2013. My people skills were very bad because I had only interacted with my siblings. Plus, I have a very mellow, laid-back sort of personality, and so I wasn't very outgoing to with regards to meeting people. But I learned people skills on YouTube. I learned people skills on YouTube, and I can embody that. It's why I'm able to come out and speak with you tonight. It's why I'm able to speak at the United Nations. It's why I'm able to speak at the World Economic Forum, the African Union, all these places that have loads of people that you have to actively interact with and mingle with and have these, what do they call it, chit-chat with before meetings happen. I'd learned all these things. And
The corridor conversation.
Exactly.
Interesting. I'll come and talk a bit more about what you do now, but let's still stay a bit more about you, your person, and your growing up. So the compensation you made for you not getting it at home is YouTube.
Yes.
You resorted to YouTube. Let's look at your desire to have wanted to be a doctor.
I'll tell you where that was from.
Well, maybe you could start from that.
Absolutely. So I had wanted to become a doctor because, at least I thought I wanted to be a doctor because I've always, in one way or the other, been drawn to social work. A part of it was because I knew that my father, when he was living in Germany, would go tree planting with his colleagues and friends during summer holidays, and it was social work. And so I'd been fascinated by this story and had wanted to do some form of social work that helped people. And when I was younger, I thought the only way that you could truly help people was through medicine. And so that was where my desire to become a doctor was. But after I met this person who had founded the Open University of West Africa, with whom I worked in 2012, he'd studied education and he was helping people. And then I realized that you could actually do other things and help people. Before I decided I didn't want to be a doctor, I got a scholarship to study medicine in California. And this man, John, had announced to his entire community that he'd gotten this homeschooled Ghanaian boy a scholarship to study medicine. And then I came back 2 weeks later and told him, hey, I don't think I want to do medicine anymore. And because I discovered that you could help people in different ways. And so that's where the medicine thing came from, and that's how it went out the window.
Wow. So you got a scholarship to study medicine in California.
Yes.
And you decided to say, oh, nah, I'm covering this particular, I'm shelving this particular desire. I'm sure a lot of people listening will be like, dude, you're arrogant.
Yes. I've been called many things, but I don't really think about them because I'm very certain of the kind of person that I am. And so I don't think arrogant is one of them. And anyone who would say that perhaps has misunderstood something or has misheard something. And that's not something that I should be thinking about. I shouldn't make it my burden.
And so your desire is just to help. So social work, whichever form it takes. Then you thought medicine was the only way.
Yes.
But now you're realizing there are so many other avenues to having that done. So you shelved medicine. Okay. Which other opportunity did you shelve?
The other one would be the opportunities to study at the UN University for Peace.
Okay. So you let that one also slide.
That one happened in 2016, and I haven't. So this year, actually, in January, I emailed them and I asked them if the scholarship was still available, and they said yes. And I considered going, but I've also been making some very good headway with my work, and so I thought, okay, probably not, because then I'd have to put one on hold, and I'd much rather continue working.
Well, the time here in the studio of Asaase Radio is 8:30 p.m. here on the 21st day of March 2021, and I'm in the studio on Candid Voice for the first time, having just one panelist. Well, it's a guest, I should say, having a conversation on homeschooling, taking a look at the Ghanaian educational system vis-a-vis the experience of Mr. Ria Kwewo, who has been wholly homeschooled. Anything he's known, not through any formal educational system. I'll need to also indicate to you that this particular episode of Candid Voice is brought to you with the kind of sponsorship support of the producers of Takai, which is very premium Ghanaian chocolate or cocoa as well as coffee liqueur. Yes, and they are the ones supporting us to bring you this particular episode of Candid Voice. That's Gihok Distilleries. They are also the home of quality. They being the home of quality beverages, they've also introduced the Meridian natural mineral water as well as hand sanitizers in various sizes. That's a story of great Ghanaian excellence evolving with the times. You can contact Gihok on 030-222-1411 or email them on info@gihokdistill.com. Yes, and it's still the Ghana month, and Gihok is saying that buy made in Ghana, use made in Ghana, support the growth of the Ghanaian economy. So coming back to our conversation with this very special young man. So how old are you?
I'm 29.
You're 29?
Yes. I turned 30 in September.
Wow. Interesting. And I before coming here, I was watching some of your videos, and you had indicated that for your birthday present for this year, you're learning a new language.
Yes.
And you are not going to commit, maybe you may not be able to commit the 10 to 13 hours a day. So you will start with just 1 or 2 hours for starters. Which language is this, and what's the motivation really?
I'm learning Mandarin, also known as Chinese. The motivation is I don't know an Asian language, and so I would like to learn an Asian language. I think it's high time I did this. I think it's high time I did this. So,
Lord have mercy. So you don't know an Asian language. That presupposes that you know other continental languages. So we could go around the various continents. Which continents have you learnt languages from, and which languages have you learned from those continents?
Well, presently only Europe and Africa. I also do not know a Middle Eastern language, unfortunately. Really? But I will remedy that.
You will remedy that?
Yes.
So that's a problem.
Yes, it is a problem, actually.
Interesting. So I suppose, they say charity begins from home. How many Ghanaian languages do you know?
Counting Pidgin, 5, and one that's close to home, Mina in Togo, or from Togo rather.
So if you're taking out Pidgin and Mina, you know 4 Ghanaian languages?
Yes.
And what are those ones?
They are Ewe, Ga, Tree, and Hausa.
Hausa?
Yes.
Interesting. Hausa is pretty much a continental language.
I think so, yes.
Because it's like a language of the nomad who keep on moving.
That's true.
Which means you have another continental language.
Quite.
So beyond the Ghanaian languages, do you know any other African languages?
Yes, that would be Mina.
Okay.
From Togo.
From Togo.
Yes.
And then the European? Aside English?
Aside English, French, and German.
Interesting. How did you manage to learn all of these languages?
So, English I was taught. Hausa I learned on my own in a few months. It's actually very easy. It's nearly as easy to learn as Chui is. Ga, my father taught me because he spoke a lot of Ga at home. I'm not sure how I learned Mina exactly, but I know it. German I learned when I was 16 or 17. I learned it because I had a crush on my next door neighbor.
Who was German?
No, she wasn't. She was Ghanaian, but I heard that they were studying French at school, and I knew that she was in love with a biracial boy in my neighborhood, and so I thought to do something to impress her, and German was the solution. She was leaving the neighborhood in 5 months, so I learned German in 4. Again, because of the ability to sit down and do deep work.
Wow, that's interesting. So all of this was because of a particular girl.
Yes, the motivation was strong. But she said no in the end, which was disappointing.
But at least you acquired something.
Yes, I didn't come to value the acquisition of German till much, much later on because I never quite used it. But now I do.
You know what? You speak with an English accent, a certain accent. I don't know if it's British or American. I mean, it's a bit confusing. But before you left home, you were with your parents up until you were 20?
20 or 21, yes.
Exactly. Where did you acquire this accent from?
So I mentioned earlier that we were secluded from everyone else. We didn't speak with our neighbors or interact with our extended family. My father sounded like this, and we spent a lot of time also listening to the BBC. Plus, I don't know if the English books that we read played a part, but I imagine for the vocabulary. And so we didn't discover that we sounded different until people started saying it after we got out, because we'd only ever listened to each other. And so
all your siblings sound like this?
Yes.
I mean, now saying this, it doesn't come up surprising because you spent some time studying etymology, which means you would have spent some time with phonics as well. And so your pronunciation is something you would have paid attention to, I suppose.
Yes, my father was very, very particular about proper English usage and proper pronunciation. In fact, he considered, sorry to my Americans out there, he considered American to be a bastardization of English. And he said that we spoke very bad English, actually. So we spent a lot of time speaking Ewe with him as opposed to English.
Oh, because he wouldn't want to hear your English.
The very next moment, you'd pick up a dictionary.
Interesting. Wow.
Quite.
That sounds pretty exciting. So, I mean, stepping out, how have you dealt with the kind of reactions you receive from people when you speak?
So whenever I'm out, I use local dialects a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't speak English unless I need to. And when I do speak English, people assume that I'm either not from here or I schooled abroad, and so they don't ask me about it too much. I've had 2 occasions in which people have told me to go back to my country.
Where your country is?
I have no idea.
So you've been told that here in Ghana?
Yes, in Osu.
Did the person speak Ghana telling you that?
Yes.
How did the person say it?
Yahenoje.
I see. Cool.
Cool.
Interesting. Wow. So you've had to, I mean, sometimes ignore, and other times do you respond?
No, I never engage in anything that I don't need to engage in. I never do that ever. I like to keep to myself quite a bit, and arguing with things that are not necessary to argue about go against keeping to yourself.
What's your consideration of the things that are necessary?
Anything that brings progress to a worthy cause, or anything that makes you productive, is necessary. Anything outside of that sphere is usually not necessary.
Interesting. Just on top of the we'll switch into your conversation about the work you do.
Okay.
But let's still stay with some of these other personal social things that I see you doing on social media. So I see you, for instance, doing short videos about different social issues. One of which I've realized is to do with relationships,
Right.
and all of that. What's informing that particular interest in speaking to some of these social matters?
Well, I fell victim to what I term as aimless dating before. I've been in a few relationships in which my partner and I at the time did not really establish where the relationship was supposed to go until much later on, and then we realized that we were going in 2 separate directions. And so I advise people that when they're getting into relationships, they should discuss the questions that might scare off their partner from the beginning. In the beginning, things such as, are you planning on marrying me? Do you think that you could marry someone like me? What are your three non-negotiables? For instance, what I mean by that is, what are some things that you'll absolutely need in your life partner? And I don't think a lot of people are having these conversations. And 2-3 years down the line, they break up because it was a I don't know what it was, but it wasn't productive and it wasn't necessary.
We typically call them the deal breakers. Yeah. So
The deal breakers, yes.
So what are those things that if they do not exist,
I mean,
you're not going to proceed?
They're deeply personal. They're deeply personal things that everyone needs to answer for themselves. I myself am Christian, and so I obviously cannot date someone, according to the Bible, with whom I am unequally yoked. So that is immediately a deal breaker for me. But also recognizing, I suppose, being mature enough to recognize if you should be in a relationship or not. I'm not in one now because I shouldn't be in one. Even if the fundamentals were met by my partner, I can't date now because I simply do not have the time to do that, so I wouldn't be the best partner.
So that's some X in the faces of some of the ladies who are sending in texts that oh, that's my crush. Well, he says he's presently emotionally unavailable.
I'm very sorry, ladies, truly.
Wow, interesting. But one of the things you've said is, even when core values are aligned, directions may differ. Would you want to speak a bit more to throw some light in that regard?
Absolutely. So maybe I have my 3 deal breakers, or however many deal breakers are met, and on paper this is my ideal partner, but I am going to spend the next 10-15 years of my life working out of the Middle East with refugees, but this person is not planning on going anywhere near the Middle East. We have the same core values, but we're not going in the same direction, and so it would ultimately not work. And so I think recognizing outside of the core values, if you're going in the same direction, if you want the same kinds of things, before committing to that thing is important.
Yeah, and you also speak to making a choice between asking some of these questions right from the onset, which you've already alluded to, or they proceeding and getting to a point where, oh, okay, so I really like this person, so I would want to talk about it now, but I'm also scared about what if it pushes this person away. Why those two options?
I mean, I think these scary questions, quote unquote, should be asked from the onset, because at least I would want to know if we have the same values and if we're going in the same direction before we become committed to each other and become besotted over each other. Because I mean, no one wants a heartbreak, and if people feel as though these questions will scare off their potential partners, then those potential partners have obviously not reached a place of maturity yet, and you should not be dating them. Because if those questions would scare you off, what's to say you'll be committed a year or two down the line?
So you think it will become whatever response that will be giving a year or two subsequently is going to be more out of convenience?
Well, it could be from anything really, because each individual is different. But I myself, if I meet someone who shares my core values and we're going in the same direction, some people don't want to get married.
Yeah.
And some people want different kinds of relationships because the world's culture is so. So it'd be nice to establish these things from the start. I don't want to be shocked with you wanting to live in a certain kind of partnership that is outside of what I believe marriage should be, after I've fallen deeply in love with you, after we've started a business together, after we've adopted a cat together, because when we break up, a lot of the times, it's, in as much as we miss the person, we also miss our routines with the person. And so why not save yourself the trouble and establish these things before you build routines and introduce them to your entire extended family.
Okay, let's come back to the issue of you, for instance, wanting to be a doctor. So much as you've indicated, there are a lot of upsides with homeschooling. Susanna in Dede, for instance, is asking, if it were to be the case that your route or your desire to be a doctor was sustained, or you wanted to be an engineer, you wanted to be an architect, or something else which requires a certain level of practicality,
right,
in terms of the curriculum, how you carry out the learning, how would that have panned out?
The plan at the time was to study for the MCAT.
Okay, and the MCAT is?
It's the medical entrance examination.
Okay.
Which was entirely possible.
Okay.
And so homeschooling did not impede that at all. And I think even going so far as to secure a scholarship for medicine speaks to the fact that homeschooling did not impede that at all. Of course, for specialized fields, formal education is necessary because the routine is necessary for specialized fields. But for a lot of the other fields, I mean, now you don't need to go to university to become an expert in business administration.
Of course.
You know.
Of course you do.
So a lot of the things that we're paying large sums of money for and spending loads of time on, we could have studied in a few months.
Which means homeschooling will be relevant up until a certain level, because beyond which you need to get into formal education.
No.
Especially for the specialized programs, say engineering.
Well, I mean, how many people are doing specialized programs?
Well, engineering, a good number.
A good number, but I'd be interested to see how many people are doing other things outside of, yeah.
So let me give you some stats. For instance, I mean, I went to Presby Boys Secondary School. My year group, we were about 620 people.
Okay.
We had 8 science classes. We had 2 business classes. We had 3 general arts classes and 1 visual arts class. What that tells you is when you take just the science classes, they are more than all the other classes put together. And out of those science classes, a good number of them either went into medicine or into engineering.
Okay.
And so that's a significant number. When you come into general arts, I mean, aside those of us who went into business schools, went to study social sciences and the liberal arts, a good number also, especially those in A1 and A2, went to study architecture, for instance.
Okay.
All right. And so there are a good number of technical programs that are taken on, all right, by some of these people. How does homeschooling beyond, or self-tutoring beyond the high school level,
right,
I mean, get to be, I mean, allowed or thrived?
You know, I think apart from the certification of proof that you would need for something like architecture, it probably still isn't necessary, because architecture is something that you could learn outside of the walls of a tertiary institution, you know. And a large part of the problem in Ghana and largely in Africa also is that the certification is required before you're able to do anything. Unfortunately, that's the case here. I am fortunate that my first employer was American. Otherwise, I probably would not be sitting here with you today. Because I remember I tried to get a job as a cleaner in Peter Pan, this restaurant Peter Pan, back in the day. They asked me for a WASI certificate. I mean, it's a mop. It's a mop, for crying out loud. I can use a mop without a WASI. And so the thinking around what qualifies you to do higher work also is wrong. And so I don't think homeschooling, the use of homeschooling becomes squashed past the high school level. I mean, sitting here right now, I'm not sure what my level of education is, because it hasn't been graded or tested. But I have been published by Forbes. I have been published by the World Economic Forum. And so I assume that I am very well versed in the things that I claim I know.
I'm just about your age. I mean, a little above your age. And with my qualifications, I think you probably would have a minimum of master's degrees, if not other professional qualifications. And so, I mean, you sound very informed, you know, and that's really the real test of informed, educated, skilled, and that's the real test of one's education. In terms of solutions, because up until COVID set in, a lot of people had not come to the first-hand experience of having to teach their own children. All right. Now we are there, and a number of people now are, actually teaching their children. And some of them are realizing that, okay, probably, and so they are now even paying attention to the kind of curriculum that their children are being subjected to.
Right.
And so they are realizing, maybe even if I am to be the one teaching these ones, I could probably do a better job. All right. Then again, they realize, okay, hitherto the thinking was I couldn't work from home. I had to be at location to work. But now they are realizing they can work from home. However, these people have a certain constraint when it comes to some of these questions. How do my children properly integrate into society and all of that? If you're going to make a suggestion, for instance, on how some of these parents could go about this process, what would be those suggestions of yours?
Off the top of my head, I would call it localized community groups with regards to integration. I think it sort of illustrates what that would be already. Have local social groups within your vicinity for your children. And so this would essentially just go on to bring neighbors closer and create more communal communities, I think also. Off the top of my head, that's what I would have done, because I'm thinking back now to my homeschooling and the seclusion in which we were brought up. And perhaps I wouldn't have had to study how to behave around other people on YouTube if the doors of my neighbors were open to us and we got to interact more with the other children in the neighborhood and that sort of thing.
More like your door was open to your neighbors as opposed to their neighbors' doors being open to you.
Right. Rightly put, yeah. If our doors had been open to our neighbors, it would have solved the problem of socializing.
Okay, so you indicate you're Christian. Were you not allowed to go to church?
I was not Christian when I was being brought up.
Okay.
I mentioned my father was a yogi.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that was what we studied.
Interesting. Because I've seen you do some yoga, stunts on Instagram.
Yes.
And so you still have it?
I still have it. So
you're very fit?
I do yoga every Sunday.
Okay, after church?
Yes. Actually, no, before church. So on Sundays, I go jogging and then I come back, I do yoga. I study for a bit. I get a morning briefing. I take a bath and I go to church. And then I come back home from church and I get back to work.
You get morning briefing from your team?
Yes.
Okay. So it's after you left home that you became Christian?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
A different series of events.
Wow. So but for you leaving home, you would have been a yogi, and that would have been it.
I don't think I would have been a yogi either, because my siblings and I, towards 2012, became rather rebellious at home, which led to my leaving home in 2012. But my other siblings had left home at different times before, gone and went hungry and came back. Oh my word. It was exciting times.
No, but I've been thinking about this, and I've also been reading and asking myself these questions. One of the reasons that the couple that I did refer to gave for not wanting their children to be in formal education was the formal educational system subdues your thinking in such a way that you stop asking questions and you'd rather submit to an instruction as opposed to asking questions. Does that then not presuppose that, once you're homeschooled and you're all woke and you're exposed to all of those things, it actually puts you in a place where you become easily susceptible to rebellion because you ask so many questions, and so if it doesn't sit well with you, then you move?
Well, our rebellion came from from not being allowed essentially out of our home and not being allowed to interact with other people. So this was really what we were rebelling against. Not so much with what was being taught, because that was very fine.
Interesting. Let's talk about your work now. And you say you Sunday mornings, I mean, after doing your training, you do a bit of you of course you freshen up, you do some reading, and then you get a briefing before you go to church.
Yes.
You have employees.
Yes.
What business do you do?
So I have a company that consults on economic integration for refugees and migrants, and we work with the United Nations, IOM specifically, and the African Union, and sometimes with the GIZ, and occasionally with the World Economic Forum.
So on a regular, you're on a retainer with the UN, the AU, at a minimum. And I mean the UN, the International Organization on Migration,
yes, specifically. Yes.
Okay. And then every now and then you get contracts with the World Economic Forum.
So with the World Economic Forum, they have what do I call it? There's a company that's under them that was founded by them. It's called the Global Shapers Community.
Global Shapers Community.
Yes,
okay.
And I'm head of equity and inclusion for refugees and migrants for the Global Shapers Community.
So you are an employee?
No, I'm not an employee because I'm also a member of the World Economic Forum.
Okay.
And so I'm consulting for them in that regard.
Oh, okay. So your heads are actually consultants?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a how do you a service arrangement?
Yes.
Service provider arrangement. Interesting. Okay. So this particular business of yours, what has been the scope so far in terms of the various countries you've worked, and what kinds of services have you provided?
So we started in Ghana, in the Krisan and Ampain refugee camps near Ivory Coast, near the Ivory Coast, the Ghana-Ivory Coast border. And we started with entrepreneurship, and then we did English as a second language for a while. We did that in Ghana and in the Dadaab camp in Kenya. And then we did Portuguese as a second language in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with Haitian migrants. And then we did entrepreneurship with the same Haitian migrants in Brazil. And then one of our refugee beneficiaries texted me one morning. I was in Nairobi, and he sent me a message, and he said, "We don't need your English courses, we just need money." And so we shifted focus from English as a second language to a microfinance program for refugees. We run it here. We got 98% repayments, but we had to shut it down because I couldn't obtain a microfinance license. And so we shut it down for a while, but we thought around it a bit and thought, what can we do to provide money in lieu of a microfinance license? And we started a UBI program for them. It stands for Unconditional Basic Income. And so now we're giving, our program is open to 8,500 refugees in Ghana and Kenya, and we're giving the refugees in Ghana $1.50 a day every day for free, and in Kenya $1 a day.
For free?
Yes.
Where are you getting that money from?
The money, the fund is funded by individuals in Europe, part of our network. We've partnered with this company that provides cryptocurrencies, and so our entire program is running on blockchain technology, but we convert the money from crypto to local currencies and give it to them via their mobile money accounts.
Okay, so you liquidated the crypto.
Yes.
Interesting. And I mean, with recent concerns about the blockchain technology, especially the cryptocurrency portion of it, how sustainable do you think this particular financing model is?
It's proved to be extremely sustainable so far. The currencies don't fluctuate as much as other currencies do. It's very stable, especially because it's running on blockchain, and it's really transparent also. It's open source, so anyone can have a look at it and make sure nothing fishy is going on. Plus, there's functions within the programs that we use where refugees are able to anonymously report if they feel their monies are being taken by someone else or something is amiss. And so the entire program is transparent and open.
So you're doing this thing pro bono.
Yes.
You know, there's that portion of people getting things for free, sometimes not actually placing value on it. So, I mean, your initial initiative of having a microfinance type scheme would make them, I mean, a lot more eager to work to repay, because you're talking about a 98% recovery.
Yes.
All right. Have you considered other ways of obtaining that microfinance license? I mean, does it mean that you may have to go through, I mean, there's a certain regulatory regime.
Yeah.
Having directors to your board who have the requisite qualifications, and then getting the right kinds of licenses?
We're absolutely still going to get it.
Okay.
It's just the UBI program is something we brought about to help pay for the small necessities within refugee camps. Sometimes things as small as sanitary pads. You know, it's really, really hard to get resources to refugee camps, especially now with COVID also. It's been very difficult, and so this has really helps them pay for those amenities.
Having spoken about COVID, let's give us a certain global map of the refugee situation. All right, you've been in the space, so I would want to believe that you would have some of these stats off the cuff. What is the situation like when it comes to refugees around the world, and what has been the topmost causes for people seeking refuge from their original places of abode?
Conflict and climate change, but mostly conflict. It's terrible. There's over 71 million people who are displaced now, and I'm actually happy that you asked this. We were looking at these same stats, and we checked what some of the most needy refugee camps were, and we discovered that it was the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. It's the world's largest refugee camp, and last week we launched our UBI program there, and we have 5,000 refugees that are beneficiaries to the program.
5,000?
Yes.
In Kenya?
Yes.
And Ghana, how many do you have?
It's 3,000 I'm paying, and 1,000, 3,500.
3,500 refugees.
Yes.
Coming mainly from which?
No. You mean how many refugees do we have here in Ghana?
You're providing services to here in Ghana.
3,500, yes. But in Ghana we have around 14 to 15,000 refugees.
That's in total.
In total, yes.
This 14,000 in excess. Which places are they coming from?
Mostly from Liberia and Ivory Coast. There's a few from Togo, the Central African Republic. There's the Central African Republic and the Congo also. But a lot of them are Francophone. The ones that we work with are chiefly Francophone in Ghana, and in Kenya they are Somali and Ethiopian mostly.
Wow. So in terms of, you speak about economic integration, so it's not just providing shelters for these people.
That's not even our job.
It's not your job,
no,
clearly.
It's not.
So economic integration, which means it comes with a certain level of economic empowerment to these people to properly so integrate and not be a nuisance to their host nations.
Well, not a nuisance. I think I've said, and I've written about this before, that the refugee camp model is dead. I say so because it was designed to be an interim solution until these refugees could be aided to return to their countries. But a lot of these countries, like Syria, for instance, has been at war for a decade or nearly a decade. And so it means that whatever refugees that they have whatever refugees that are from there are going to be in camps for a decade or so. We have refugees in Ghana who've been here since 96, for instance, and they're still here and in camps, and it's not very useful. And these are people who had lives before they became refugees, and these are people who have skills. And so our thinking is if we help them stand on their feet again, then they'll be able to lend their skills back to the host nation and feed their families and feed the economies at the same time.
And so this UBI program, I mean, clearly it's a handout kind of system. right? So how do you actually attain economic empowerment for these individuals?
This UBI program is a temporary fix. It's only $1.50 a day. After all, you can't do a lot with $1.50 a day, even in Ghana. It's a temporary fix that we decided to run with whilst we sought other means of actually helping, practically helping, because Ghanaian law states that refugees can live and work as you and I do as Ghanaians. So why are they still in camps? And what can we do about it?
And so the solution, sustainably, what's the plan beyond this UBI program?
To revamp the microfinance project, because that was working very well. We have 18 women who restarted their businesses and grew their businesses within the camps and outside of the camp community because of the microfinance program. So we've had success stories, and we're working with our funders in Japan to fund the microfinance program, which was supposed to happen this year, but we decided to do research first. And so we're going into the Krisan camp April next month to conduct research for a few months on the different levels of need in the camp, because you can't assume that because they're all refugees they all need $200 to start their businesses. There's different degrees of need at different levels in the camps, and so we're going to do research on that.
And you said the Krisan camp is on the border of Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire?
It's not far from the Ghana Cote d'Ivoire
border.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Then again, in terms of your specific endeavors with respect to refugee work, economic integration, what have been some of the countries that your work has taken you to, and specifically what have you gone to do over there?
Wow, this is a tough one. I've been to about 27 countries. A lot of the time it was to speak on how to integrate refugees in those countries, or learnings that we could take from integration that had worked there, or that's been working with us. A lot of the time also it's to speak at these bodies that I've mentioned already, with the AU and the GIZ and so on and so forth. But a lot of the conversation has been around what is wrong with the refugee camp model, what is wrong with the current data that we have on refugees and migrants, how is migration affecting the migrants and the host communities, and what economic integration for refugees actually means, and if a one-size-fits-all will work. And the easy answer to that is no. I say so because we started an entrepreneurship program for refugees in 2016, and I designed it when I was living in Nairobi, and it worked well in the Dadaab camp, but it completely failed in Ghana. And I found out later that it was because the culture was different. So if the camp culture is different, and the languages that they speak are different, and the religions that they subscribe to are different, it's not likely to work because of the different sets of things that they believe in. So I came to Ghana, and I spent 6 months in the Krisan and Ampain refugee camps, and I redesigned the program, and then it picked up. And so these are mostly the conversations that I'm having in the places that I'm going to.
Interesting. Specifically at the World Economic Forum, what did you speak to?
I spoke about more robust integration solutions for refugees. A lot of, unfortunately, because of the scale of the problem and the rapidity at which it's happening, at which displacement is happening due to wars and climate change, it's really difficult to send out pockets of teams to these focus areas to design programs for them. So a lot of the solutions are designed as a one-size-fits-all type thing, and that doesn't work. And so the questions that were asked were around how to build more robust integration solutions that would either work across camp or could be tweaked a little bit with rapid learning to work in other refugee settings.
Interesting. It's a bit befuddling. I mean, the extent to which you're informed, all right, on a number of things. I'm sure you would have read a number of economic books or books on economics and all of that. We find ourselves in a very interesting time, globally, but of course also as a nation, coming back from a COVID situation. A State of the Nation's address was read somewhere. I think that was last 2 weeks. I think that was last week, actually. And then the budget also read subsequently on Friday. There have been a lot of conversations up and down with respect to the approach of the government going around this, going with a taxation kind of policy to rake in a lot more revenue and all of that. What do you make of all of these things? And from where you do sit, in terms of suggestions on how to come out of this economic quagmire that we find ourselves in, how would you, or what would you tell the managers of the economy to go about this?
I don't think it's even necessary. One, I missed the State of the Nation's address. I missed the reading of the budget also.
But you've subsequently not maybe chanced on some of the highlights coming from that.
No, I haven't actually, because our problem is corruption, and if that doesn't change, nothing will change, and no rhetoric or semantics will fix the problem. I think our leaders know what needs to be done. A lot of them are products of Ivy League institutions. A lot of them have lived or studied abroad. A lot of them interact with governments all the time, including first world governments, and so they know the way that things should work, and if they're not working, then it's corruption, and so there's nothing to be said or done in that regard. I think it would just be time spent on air, which is not necessary.
Making suggestions that are already known.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I mean, Ghana and Singapore received independence the same day and year, I think. And I've lived in Singapore a while, and I live here. You know, and you think of the kind of person that Lee Kuan Yew was, and how Singapore was built, and the measures that have been put in place to curb corruption and to make everything transparent and that sort of thing. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to achieve those levels of discipline here, but we're not, and it's because we're inherently corrupt. And so
wow. So talking about our generation, someone shared something on Instagram talking about the fact that, yes, he says people born between 1985 and 1995 are the most unique generation of all time. And here's why. They are in between two generations, the one before the internet and technology took over, and the generation after, right? He goes ahead to say the generation before us was old school and believed in working hard. The generation after us believes in working smart. He goes ahead and says further, the generation before us can be scammed with simple emails asking for money and offering love. The generation after us knows it is better to have 4 emails, one for serious stuff, one for social media, another for financial transactions, and one for experiment for things you don't trust. We saw it all. Radio, TV, Mario, Waptrick, Nokia, Nintendo 64, Samsung, iPhone, PS4, tape, CD, VHF, DVD, Mixit, MiG32, Netflix, Snapchat, emojis, virtual reality.
yeah,
We are the generation that knows tradition and question it, picking from it what makes sense to us. The generation before us knew no questions. The generation after us knows no tradition. We are the gap between the industrial age and the internet age. We understand both sides of the experience. We should be running the world. The old guys don't understand what is going on anymore. The new guys don't fully understand where what's going on came from. And this is what this person is saying. You being a young person who falls right within this particular bracket, those born between 1985 and 1995, in terms of how the world is being run presently, and this picking your mind on global issues, our approach to, now you're working within the diplomatic space. Lebanon has been at it for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
You've already alluded to Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Iraq is not full, it has not recovered. Iran seems to be a no-go area.
Mm-hmm.
North Korea, you don't speak about them. China is at it with the United States. Britain, from their imperialist, system, they are now once again going into seclusion, talking about Brexit and all of that. Africa is now talking about economic integration. So we are talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area,
Yes.
and all of that. Do you think our approach towards solutions to the world's issues, there's some coherence in there?
I'm hoping that it will come with the African Continental Free Trade Area. That could be. It seems as though so far that is the largest pot of glue that we have as a continent, and a lot of our economic superpowers have joined also or are joining, and so I think that'll be the first real glue that will give us one voice, and so I'm very, very happy about that. I heard that our president announced a couple of weeks back that no more exporting cocoa to Switzerland. I think these kinds of things are small steps in the right direction, and if Africa, by some big dream, managed to come together, then we really would be a force to be reckoned with. But there's still a lot of things that go under the table that we're not talking about, and I've spoken about this before in one of my videos. It's the post-colonial tax that I think 14 African countries pay to France every year. It's $500 billion with a B to France every year, and somehow France still has a permanent seat at the United Nations, and the Westerners are not complaining about it, and Africa is not complaining about it either. No one speaks about it. I heard about this thing in 2013, and when I first started attending these quote-unquote prestigious meetings, I asked my colleagues who were a few steps up the ladder if they wouldn't talk about it, but everyone's been hush-hush about it, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's protected individual interests, but I think if we also start discussing the real pertinent issues that are holding us back, then we will eventually become a force to be reckoned with. I don't see how 14 countries off the continent pay $500 billion every year, plus other taxes because their currencies are minted in Europe and are pegged to European taxes. I don't see how they're ever expected to climb out of the economic squalor that they're in. And so a lot of these questions we shouldn't be asking yet until we start having certain discussions about what's really wrong. If you tell me that I may move out of my house and go live wherever I want, and I'm making 500 cedis, and you're taking more than half of that money and you're taxing me on the utilities that I'm using at home, how am I ever supposed to move out? And so the question is not, why have I not moved out, or where would I like to live? The question is, why are you still crippling me, and why are my parents not addressing this issue? And our parents right now are leaders who are not addressing this issue, and I can't imagine why not, but then I can imagine why it's not happening also.
Well, bringing the issue from the parents, the leaders, as you'd want to call them, to us, our generation, looking at the kinds of stories being churned out, about young people, certain people getting into some of these internet scamming and fraud, situations, one of which I had alluded to from what I read from Instagram. And people's quest to get rich quick and to get things done. People no more paying attention to certain traditions and the essence behind it, all right? And people's focus now being on the outcomes or the results as opposed to the process, the procedure, not caring much about how they acquire certain things. It's
Right.
just about let's get it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, going with that popular tagline, "Get rich or die trying."
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this particular generation give the world any hope? Our generation.
I think so. I think so. I think a lot of these get rich quick schemes are perhaps not as populous, and I mean out of 100 people, maybe not 50 are engaged in these schemes. Maybe it's just 2 or 5. I think what has happened is we have subconsciously taken a small substrata of information on people engaging in these activities and have blown it up. Information is reaching us so much quicker now with the internet and the advent of social media and that sort of thing. We're not hearing a lot of the converse stories, but the people who actually do get rich quick are on social media, and so there's a lot of what we're seeing. I don't think it's as I know a lot of people. My contact list has over 5,000 people on it, but I don't know that many people running these scams, which tells me...
When you say, so your phone contact list, about 5,000 of them. No wonder you indicated you hardly use WhatsApp.
I don't go on WhatsApp. Oh my goodness. But my point is, even in my neighborhood where I live, I know a few people who are doing this, but the larger number of people I know are not doing this. But those of them the few who are doing this are on social media, and it's all you get in your feed. So maybe it's not as populous as social media has made it seem. And so yes, I think this generation still bears hope for the continent and the country.
Interesting. So I mean, for you, let me ask you this very straight, hard question. For you, between, and that's coming back to even our original homeschooling conversation, for you, is formal education one that we should look at ways of changing, or I mean, it is just not fit for purpose?
We should definitely change it. I'm not saying it's useless. It has its uses, absolutely, but it hasn't been changed for much too long. I don't think the conversation on the future of work has started to happen in our tertiary institutions, and it should at least be happening on a conversational level. At the very least, I don't think it's happening. A lot of the people that I speak to who are Ghanaian, who are in tertiary institutions, who are here, have not heard of the concept of the future of work, don't know anything about the fourth industrial revolution, are not informed about this, and so they're essentially going out into the world with their degrees on their chests and blindfolds on their eyes. And I think we should at least start having the conversation.
I know the World Economic Forum lists top 10 skills required for that fourth industrial or fourth revolution, or the new era of work, for instance. And they mention in there, I mean, some of these top skills: critical thinking.
Yes, there's critical thinking.
Communication skills.
Yes. Essentially
leadership.
Skills that a robot can't do, or
Exactly.
an artificial intelligence can't do. And we really should be having these conversations. It's so important, because in just about a decade, so much work will be phased out, and then we'll all be doing these internet scams.
I know, for instance, accountants, you're already, I mean, just newsflash for accountants, you're already out of work, because what you do,
Oh my word.
systems can do.
And lawyers.
Lawyer, I was fascinated to find that out.
And lawyers,
Yeah.
including Harvard-educated lawyers, so everyone's in trouble.
Yeah. Maybe nurses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that with regards to hands-on work, like medical work in Africa at least, those jobs will be secure for several more decades to come, just by virtue of the slowness with which
We take on things.
the sort of technology will reach us, for instance. But COVID has accelerated this fourth industrial revolution a great deal. COVID has done that, so everyone needs to stay on their toes about what's going on.
Interesting. We've been having conversation with Ria Gemaga Kwewo. I'm trying not to get his name wrong. I hope I didn't get it wrong. The middle one especially. He's a totally, fully homeschooled young person. He turns 30 this year, but he has his own company which he runs, consulting on economic integration, providing solutions to many persons around this African continent and beyond. Already in just between Ghana and Kenya, they are attending to in excess of 8,000 refugees and providing solutions that many countries, states themselves are now providing for some of these refugees. And this young man is just about hitting the fullness of his third decade. And yes, this is the kind of work he's doing. Once again, emphasis: never attended any school, never written any exams. The only ones we know he took were writing summaries from books that he had read at home. And from my last check, he's read in excess of 1,700 books. Some, every now and then he will just come and give us a line or two from on Instagram, just so we know that yes, he's done that. But as we wrap up, one last thing. You have a very nice voice, and I'm aware that you have some interest in doing something with voice. What's this particular interest?
Oh, yes. So very recently, because of my TikTok account, a lot of people have told me to do voiceovers, and so I've been asking around, perhaps in the wrong places. I've been asking around for places that I can do voiceovers at. So if anyone has any info on that, please hit me up on my Instagram or on my TikTok or Twitter.
Yes, and on Instagram it's rya.kuewor, rya.kuewor, and yeah, he has a great voice. You can use him for one thing or two. But maybe one last thing for the ladies. You said you are not emotionally available now because you're on the move. What if this person is very much aligned with you on your core values, and in terms of direction is willing to do this traveling around with you, actually supporting you in that regard? Are you open to that?
Not entirely. So, and Benjamin, I mentioned this to you the first time we spoke, that I would be going to Syria. So that's one thing. For instance, my partner would not be allowed in an active war zone. This place has chemical warfare, kidnappings, stabbings, suicide bombers, and that sort of thing actively happening, and so it would not be allowed. But also, I really would not be the best partner at this stage of my life because I am as busy as I say I am.
So when will you not be this busy?
I'm not certain. Right now I have a 7-day work week. My day starts at 5:25 a.m. every day and ends at 12:45 a.m. every day.
On that rather sad note, my name is Benjamin Ofeado. This show has been brought to you with the kind of support of Gihog Distilleries, the home of premium African alcoholic beverages, which is very competitive on the world market. They have also introduced in recent times the Meridian mineral water and also hand sanitizers in various forms. You can reach out to them on their various platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook, and all of that. Also on email, as I had earlier indicated. And you can get some of these products. One of their premium products is Takai, which is a premium coffee and cocoa liquor. And they have brought you Candid Voice this evening. Once again, my name is Benjamin Ofeado, and I've had here in the studio Ria Gemega Kwewo,
yes,
who has been our guest, and time on the clock is exactly 9:30, and we say have a good evening. And once again, on Candid Voice, we say it as it is. Have a good evening.